All right, let's bring in Tal Heinrich, spokesperson for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So here's what the New York Times says is being withheld in this weapons shipment. Total of 1,800 2,000-pound bombs and 1,700 500-pound bombs. Again, because the administration is concerned that they could be used in the campaign in Rafah. I asked this question to Senator Josh Hawley. I'll ask it to you, Tal. Is the Biden administration and is President Biden acting in the best interests of Israel or in the best interest of his re-election campaign?
Well, John, thank you for having me on, and Jackie. In that respect, I can't specifically address the specifics of such reports, but what I can tell you, and I think it's really important to emphasize it today, is that since the beginning of the war on October 7th, our war objectives have not changed, and same goes for the U.S. backing of these objectives. And these are to bring back our stolen people, the hostages back home, all 132 of them, to destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities, and to ensure that Gaza will never, ever pose a terror threat to us again. Now, it's no secret that there are some, disagreements on certain issues in the specifics of this war between Washington and Jerusalem. But in the big scheme of things, we do see eye to eye. We have our ways to discuss, behind closed doors, such disagreements. We take advice from best friends. We share concerns with best friends. But we have our ways to do these things. And earlier this week, as you know, our war cabinet took a unanimous decision to go into Rafah, and specifically the operation right now is focusing on the eastern part of Rafah for several reasons that we've discussed before. It's a very strategic city to achieving all of our war objectives.
Tal, I want to ask you, how did this message arrive with the Prime Minister's office? Because President Biden didn't tell Congress about this.
Again, I can't discuss on air the specifics of, the communication on the nature of this communication between. I'm in New York right now, and we have ways of conveying such messages between Washington and Jerusalem, and media channels are not one of them.
So you can imagine that this came up in a White House gaggle with John Kirby. Here's what John Kirby said about withholding the munitions.
Our commitment to Israel's security remains ironclad. We don't, as a matter of course, talk about individual shipments one way or the other. But again, nothing's changed about our commitment to Israel's security.
But if President Biden is withholding weapons deliveries to Israel, how can his support be ironclad? What he's doing would seem to be the very definition of conditional support, not ironclad.
Well, President Biden, since October 7th, has stood by Israel and also in Israel, which was very substantial. He said, don't to our enemies, don't try us, don't test us. The president, the administration, Congress, they also stood by us and helped us repel an unprecedented attack by Iran, moving assets into the region and so forth. We're working together on increasing humanitarian aid into Gaza, that pier that the U.S. is involved at, because we want to make sure that we're able to achieve, again, all of our war objectives. So, as I said, we don't have to agree on every small detail with our best friends in Washington, but we have ways of conveying such messages, holding these discussions, and they're not in the public eye.
But Tal, to your point there, that the U.S. and Israel got together and defeated the fusillade of weapons that Iran fired toward Israel, knowing that Iran has been proven to be a toothless tiger. Why doesn't Netanyahu ask Biden to demand an unconditional surrender from Hamas and return of all of the hostages, living or their remains?
I think it goes without saying. Everyone
Nobody's
wants to see...
asking for an unconditional surrender from the White House.
Everyone wants to see Hamas surrendering. Everyone wants to see Hamas defeated. Everyone wants to see all the hostages back home. And everyone wants to see a Gaza that will no longer be a threat to Israel. And there are various ways to achieving these goals. There's no substitute for, a victory, a total victory in this war, because we know what's the alternative, Israelis refuse to be butchered, burned, and raped again. This is exactly why we're operating in Rafah now.
Tal, can you just explain to us what the immediate impact is going to be of these weapons not arriving? What's the real effect?
Well, I think we'll have to wait until the IDF will address that matter. It's not something that I can discuss at this point. As the IDF spokesperson, Daniel Hagari, just said, I think a few hours ago in Israel, and I can only echo his words here today, these issues, such issues that pertain, to these reports that you just brought up are things that are being discussed behind closed doors.
And just lastly, how has the administration expressed to Israel the way in which it would support eradicating Hamas? Because we hear them say that they are backing Israel in its intention to eliminate the terrorist threat, but all we seem to be watching is, pressure on Israel to pull back. So what are you hearing on the other side that says go forward?
I can speak for Israel here and say that we know what it takes to destroy Hamas's military capabilities and their governing capabilities. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why we're in Rafah right now. And over the past 24 hours or so, we've taken control, operational control of the Gazan side of the Rafah border crossing, for instance, because, that was a key artery that helped Hamas establish their terrorist regime in Gaza, from which much of the ammunition and terror infrastructure is funneled in over the years. Rafah is very, very strategic to that goal that you just mentioned. We know for a fact that there are hostages there. We know that there are 4 remaining Hamas operational battalions there, and probably also key figures in the organization. So it's vital that we operate there.
And yet President Biden is sending a signal to say hands off Rafah. Tal Heinrich, great to see you today. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John, Jackie.